Hey, how's it going? Seth here. In this video, I'm going to show you how to use some clever AI trickery to make your initial marketing messages a lot more intelligent, personalized, and unique, so you can ultimately grab the attention of your recipient a lot more effectively, which will give you a higher response rate and should hopefully give you a much better opportunity to make a lot more money in the long run. And it all starts here in this initial step of sending the best possible first message to this prospect. And what I'm going to show you here took me several hours to figure out. When I finally got there, it was really cool. I think you're going to think the same thing when you see this. And it shouldn't take you several hours if you just follow what I'm going to show you here. And by the way, everything I'm going to show you here, along with many other tutorials, exercises, and tools you can use to enhance your business and life with AI, can be found at pulseinnercircle.com. If any of this is of interest, just be aware there's a lot more you can find at pulseinnercircle.com. So, giving credit to where credit is due, Andy Rouse, good friend of mine, is the one who originally showed me how to do this. So much of what I'm showing you essentially came from him. I also heard about this trick from Callan Faulkner. What I'm going to show you here can be used for texting or direct mail or email. Anything where you're writing out a message, you can apply this in those situations. Just to show you what I mean, I'm going to quick show you the end result, and then I'm going to show you how we get to this end result. So let's say you are sending out, direct mail, for example, to a bunch of people, and you don't want to just say, hey, I want to make an offer to buy your land. You want to actually look like you've spent some time looking into their specific property and you know some unique characteristics about it. So what you can do here, this information right here you see on the left was just standard information that comes from a list, whether it's Data Tree or the Land Portal or PropStream or wherever. They all come with this basic information that you can pull out. And the coordinates, this was something that I actually had to take from two different cells and merge them together to get them in a single cell. But this thing right here where it talks about the area of that property, which basically means what's the nearest city that it's by, that actually did not come from my list. I probably could have gotten it from there, but when you're talking to somebody about their property, if you just say, hey, I see your property in blank county, a lot of people don't think about their property in the context of the county. They would think about it in the context of maybe the city or the township that it's closest to. But even going a couple steps further than that, what if you want to actually reference the nearest point of interest that that property is closest to? Maybe it's a body of water. Maybe it's a highway. Maybe it's an intersection. Maybe it's a state or national park nearby. Maybe it's an airport. And you want to just mention that in your initial message to that person, just to kind of show, hey, I see your property that's X number of acres in or near this city, and it's not far from this airport or this lake or this highway. You can figure that out really easily. You can do it with ChatGPT or Claude or any one of these large language model APIs. And then when you actually have all that information, you can string it together with an actual intelligent sentence or two that shows that you know more about this property than the average person. You could say, hey, I saw your property in the Big Rapids area. It looks like it's about 7 acres. Do you know how far away that property is from Manistee National Forest? So these are very specific things that 99% of other marketers are not going to take the time to research on every single property. And luckily, you don't have to know how to do that either. You just have to know how to tell ChatGPT to do it and then do it at scale. So how do we do this? Well, we're going to use a few different tools to make this happen. First of all, we're going to grab our API key from our ChatGPT or OpenAI account. And I'll just tell you right off the bat, this is something that seemed really confusing and overwhelming and intimidating to me at first, but it's super easy. You can do it in a matter of seconds. I'll show you in just a second. The other thing we're going to use is Google Sheets. It's free, super easy to use. And also this extension or plugin for Google Sheets, which is called GPT for Sheets. Let's start first of all with getting our API key from OpenAI. So first off, if you don't already have a paid ChatGPT Plus subscription, which costs $20 a month at the time of this recording, you're going to need that. If you don't already have this, let me just reassure you this is 110 million% worth the cost. $20 a month is nothing for all the benefits you're going to get from the paid version of ChatGPT. And once you've done that, you're going to enjoy a lot of extra useful tools within ChatGPT. But there's this whole other world of value you have access to if you know how to get your your OpenAI, that's the company that owns ChatGPT, your OpenAI API, and then hook that up to other external applications. To get this, you want to go to platform.openai.com. You can go up here and click on Dashboard in the navigation bar. And then over here in the left sidebar, you should see this thing that says API keys. And all you have to do is click Create New Secret Key. And we can name this whatever we want to. I'm going to be using this with GPT for Sheets, which I'm going to show you in just a second. So I'm going to put that in here, and then we'll click Create Secret Key, and it's going to give you this key. And I'm blurring this out because this is not something you want to share with anybody. If anybody else got a hold of your API key, they could basically use your account and run up a huge bill and cost you a whole lot of money. So don't ever share this with anybody. And it even says for security reasons, you won't be able to view this again through your OpenAI account. If you lose this secret key, you'll need to generate a new one. So I'm going to go ahead and click this and then be done with it. Now, when we go over here to Google Sheets, something you probably don't already have installed is this extension here called GPT for Sheets. So I've already installed it on my browser, but you're probably not going to be there. So I'm going to include a link to this beneath this video. All I got to do is install it through one of these buttons here that you'll see. And when you get back over here, you'll be able to click up here where it says extensions. And then down here, you're going to see this new thing here that says GPT for Sheets and Docs. And we're going to open this, and it's going to take a second to open this up. And then once it does open up, go ahead and click on this little hamburger icon and then go down here to API keys. And as you can see here, you don't have to use OpenAI for this. You could use Gemini or Anthropic, which is Claude, but I'm just going to use the OpenAI one. And I think for most intents and purposes, it's a pretty solid option to work with. Click Save. Once this thing saves, Google Sheets is now connected to our OpenAI account, which is only really helpful once you actually know how to use GPT for Sheets. Basically allows you to run a bunch of prompts right here in Google Sheets without having to go back and forth between ChatGPT and Google Sheets to copy and paste stuff. It just does it right here. And in order to run those prompts, you have to know certain commands, and you can actually see a list of all these different commands right here. And this one right here where it just says GPT, this is the one you're probably going to use most often, but there's a bunch of different options to choose from. There's actually a video that kind of explains pretty well how to use each one of these. It doesn't even have any words. It just shows the screen doing it. So I'll link to that video beneath this as well if you want to check that out. I'm only going to use a few of these in this video, but just be aware there's lots of different ways you can use this. So before we can do a whole lot here, we have to get the data that we're going to use from our list that we got from, I'm using data tree in this case, but it doesn't really matter where you got it from. We just need to get that key information from that list onto this Google Sheet for me to show you how this works. So we're going to start by grabbing each property owner's name along with the acreage of their property, along with the state and the county where that property is located, and then the coordinates of each property. You could grab more information if you wanted to, but those are just the basic things I need for this. So this is the original raw list, which has a ton of data that I don't really need. But the key things I do need are these two columns right here for the latitude and longitude. And we actually have to combine both of these into one column, which I'll show you how to do that in just a second. But we also need to grab the lot acreage, which is way over here, and their first and last name. In this case, I'm going to use this one because it just spells it out really nicely. Once we've got that stuff, we can paste it right here. So we got the owner name, acreage, coordinates. Let me quick show you how to combine these two coordinates numbers into one cell. So if we were to come back over here, so what we want to do is create this new column called coordinates. And then over here, put this formula where we're going to take these two different cells and put them together. In this case, we actually want to take G2 because that's the latitude, and then H2 because on this particular sheet, that is the longitude. Put them together, and there we go. It just combined them. So I've already got them all over here, but if you wanted to combine them, you can do it that way. And by the way, it works pretty much the exact same way in Microsoft Excel if you're doing it that way. But for the purposes of what we're doing here, it has to be in Google Sheets in order for this GPT for Sheets extension to work in the first place. So really, Google Sheets is where you should be going to start this process. Now, next up, we're going to put 3 new columns in here. One of them is property area. The idea behind this is just to be able to specify based on these coordinates, what would a person most likely say is the area where their property is located, whether that's a city or a township or something else. They wouldn't say my property is in the Newaygo County area because that's way too big of an area. They'd could say my property is in the Big Rapids area, which are smaller towns within Newaygo County. So we're going to start by just being a little bit more intelligent about where this property actually is and how we can say that. We're also going to say what a local area of interest is. And this could be, like I said, airport, a highway, a body of water, a state or national park. So we're going to identify what that is. And then we're going to take that information and put it into an actual message that uses all this information. So to figure out the property area, we need to use the GPT prompt. So we're going to say equals GPT and then parentheses and then quotation. And when we're using this command, what's going on now is we are giving ChatGPT a prompt, essentially the same way that you would normally do it when you're typing it into the ChatGPT online interface. Same thing here, it's just all happening within this one cell. So we could say something like, tell me the nearest town or city that this person would use in describing land at this latitude and longitude, and return only the name of that town or city. And then we close the prompt with this quotation mark at the end, put a comma, space, and then specify the cell that we're talking about. So these are the coordinates in cell E2 that I want you to use when you give me that answer right here. And I'll just tell you one thing, this is a iterative process, meaning you may have to try several different prompts to get ChatGPT to give you the exact answer you want in this case. For example, if I were to just say, tell me the nearest town or city that this person would use in describing land at this latitude and longitude, and that's it, then it would give me kind of a big, long answer. The nearest town to the coordinates is Newaygo, Michigan. So I don't want to actually insert this whole thing in my final message. I want just the name Newaygo. That's it. Not this whole big long response. So when it doesn't give you the exact answer you want in the format that you want, you might have to reiterate and keep changing up your prompt until it's giving you only what you want. That was why in my case, I added this thing here that says, and return only the name of that town or city. Now it's giving us Big Rapids. Now you'll also notice, originally it told me Newaygo, now it's telling me Big Rapids. Which one is it? So unfortunately, these large language models can hallucinate a little bit and not always be accurate. So sometimes what you'll have to do is take some of these things and just verify it and figure out which one is it. Is it closer to Newaygo or Big Rapids? Basically just figure out, is this really accurate or not? So in our case, this is the property itself. Here's Big Rapids. Here's Newaygo. So really either one of them could work, but the one that's actually closest would be probably this one, either Bitely or Lily. So let's go back here and try to reiterate again and see if we can get even more pinpoint accurate to get that tiny town that it's actually closest to. So let's try this again and say, find the nearest small town or unincorporated community a local person would use to describe land at this latitude and longitude. And then exclude larger cities or towns unless they are the only options. Return only the name of the nearest small town or community. Let's see if this does a better job. Okay, Fremont. Let's see. Is that actually by Fremont? Okay, so Fremont is right there. That does look like it's closer, but not that much closer. So we're getting better. And honestly, I think any of these could work, but the closer, the better, if you know what I mean. It's kind of up to you on how far you want to go with that. I think Fremont is good enough, so I'm going to leave it that way. But the main point here is just that it could take you a try or two or three or 10 to get it to show you exactly what you want it to show you. And then when you start getting these answers, don't assume it's doing it right. Double check 3 or 5 or 10 of them to make sure it's consistently giving you an acceptable response. And once you have all of that done, that's when you can actually take this, when you have a working formula that you know is solid, and drag it down. And it's going to copy that formula to all these cells in the same way it did up here and give you the answer for all of these things. And it's going to take a few seconds for this to work because it's actually thinking. But right there, that's our first example where we could have spent a ton of time filling in these cells if we went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth between ChatGPT and Google Sheets to put that in there. But GPT for Sheets just does it all for us without us having to go anywhere. And I will say, every time it's doing this, it is costing fractions of a cent. So there is a cost to doing this, but it's not a whole lot. It doesn't really get to be a lot until you're either doing a obscene amount of this, which is possible with what we do. But another way you can put some guardrails on this is depending on which model you're using from OpenAI. So if we open up GPT for Sheets again, we can see right up here at the top, we can specify which model we want it to use. And I can tell you at the time of this recording, this will certainly change in the future if you're watching this years from now. I'm sure this is all different. But if you look down through each one of these things, it will tell you what the cost is per token when you use this thing. And for example, 4.0 is $20 for 1 million tokens. 3.5 Turbo is $2.5 for the exact same number of tokens. 4.0 Mini is 90 cents for 1 million tokens. I think that's the cheapest one. Claude 3.5 Sonnet. Again, at the time of this recording, that's like one of the best ones out there. That's $20. So if you want to keep this as cheap as possible, GPT-4o Mini is probably the one to use. And whenever you're looking at this in the future, just look at the one that's cheapest and use that one. And you might be wondering, what makes it cheap? Does that mean it's going to give me worse information or just go slower? And I think it might be a little bit of both. It probably isn't quite as smart as some of the other ones are, and it probably will take a little bit longer to load. And if you did want to use one of these higher end ones, let's just try it and see what happens. Let's do GPT-4o, see if we get any different answers here. So we'll take this, drag it down, and it's giving us the exact same answers. So why pay more, right? So let's switch back here to GPT-4o Mini. Now, local area of interest. I'm going to show you the prompt that I developed for this, but you're welcome to change this up to whatever you want so that it serves your purposes. So for this one, I've actually had to work on this quite a bit. I still don't know if I totally have this nailed yet, but the idea is to identify this local area of interest or local feature of interest. And the way I currently have this prompt written is identify the single nearest airport, highway, or interstate, or body of water, such as a lake, river, or pond, whichever single one is nearest to these coordinates. Prioritize the closest and smallest features, such as a small local airport over a larger international airport, an inland lake over a great lake or ocean, and a nearby main road over a distant highway, and then return only the name of the nearest single feature and provide no additional information or explanations. Let's see how this does here. Okay, so the Mason County Airport. So let's look this up in Google Maps, see how close that is. Looks like it's about 47 minutes away. So I still don't think this is perfect. I think if it was actually doing this right, what it would say is Big Star Lake, because that is the nearest inland lake to this location. But it's doing better. So originally what it was putting in here was the Gerald R. Ford Airport, which is like an hour-and-a-half drive away because that's the nearest international airport. But that's not what I want. I want some kind of a local-ish feature that would at least make sense. So Mason County Airport, that kind of makes sense. I think Big Star Lake would make more sense, but this isn't necessarily wrong. I just think it could be better. But the point is just to try to make it something local so it sounds more intelligent and unique to each individual person and property. Once you have this prompt figured out, and once you've verified it a few times to make sure it's actually giving you a correct, accurate answer, do the same thing where you basically run that prompt on all these things. And it will do the same thing where it takes the coordinates and comes up with that local area of interest. And it looks like it's telling me Mason County Airport for everything. I'm actually curious if we got rid of this whole airport thing and only did the bodies of water and the highways and see how that might be different, if it gets it any more accurate. So Muskegon River. Looks like it should still say Big Star Lake, but the Muskegon River is not that far. And if we do that again, see if it gives us the same thing for all of them. Yeah, so it looks like it's doing the same thing. I'm curious if we change this back to 4.0 and try this again, see if it does anything different. Big Rapids River Walk Trail. Interesting. Let's try these other ones. See if it does a better job. All right, there you go. So some of these are saying Big Star Lake. So maybe that's the answer when you are trying to find a local area of interest, is for this particular purpose using a more intelligent large language model that actually has the capability of understanding maps a little bit better. So that could be something worth thinking about. Now, finally, we actually have to use this information to craft a message. So I'll show you what my message looks like. You can obviously change this up for whatever you want, whether you're sending emails or texts or direct mail, or even using this as a script with something like 11 Labs where you're creating a voice that says these things and then send ringless voicemails with that. You could do it that way too. You kind of have to use your own creativity. But my prompt looks like this. So I'm saying, I saw your property in the F2 area, and F2 is in this case Fremont. It looks like it's about blank acres. So that's where we would grab the acreage number over here in column B. Then do you know how far away that property is from this local area of interest? So for this particular one, we're not even using GPT for sheets anymore. We're just using the information that it generated for us and stringing together a intelligent sentence that sounds a lot more educated about the property itself. So we can do this same kind of thing and drag it down. And you'll notice it's not loading or anything because it's just copying over this stuff and plugging in that information. And now we've got this unique message for everybody. It's pretty awesome. And from here, if you're using launch control, you could merge it with launch control and send out the individual messages that way. So you might want to run these prompts on a more detailed spreadsheet that includes the phone numbers and a lot more information because it's all going into launch control or smarter contact or whatever you're using for your text. And if you're using direct mail, you could just set up a merge field to carry this stuff over to maybe the first sentence of your mail campaign. You're sending out emails, you could do the same kind of thing. And there you go. Now, just a couple other random cool things I'll show you here, just because it's kind of cool, just to illustrate what GPT for Sheets can do beyond this. So let's say you wanted to send this to people that you know speak Spanish. So you could do Spanish. And then in this field, we're going to do this GPT function. So GPT underscore translate. And then in parentheses, we're going to put H2 because that's the original message we were trying to translate. And then that $I$1 is just referring to the word right above it that says Spanish, indicating that's the translation we're trying to do. And when we do that thing, it'll show us this exact same message, but now it's in Spanish. You can do the same thing and have these unique messages all translated to Spanish. And in case you don't know, these large language models do an incredibly good and accurate job of translation. So for those of you in the audience who do speak Spanish, maybe you can read this and let me know. Is that accurate? Does that look right to you? Now, one thing to be aware of with these API keys is that when you start using them someplace else, it's going to cost you a little bit every time it's used. Doesn't cost much. It's usually like fractions of a cent, but you can set limits for how much it's going to cost you. So say if you want to just limit that to $18, which it looks like it's doing that by default. So if I wanted to, I could increase this limit and basically just allow it to go up higher. So again, just be aware there are costs involved, but if you're really trying to do this kind of thing at scale, you probably agree it's not that expensive considering how much time it can save you when you're trying to do this sort of thing. And again, there are tons of different use cases for this. The idea here was just to give you some ideas and inspiration on how that works. But if you come up with other clever ideas and use cases for this, I'd love to hear it. And by the way, if you want to learn more about these kinds of AI tools that are coming to the market and are just amazing resources, along with how to use ChatGPT and Claude and all these new developments happening in the AI world, be sure to check out the Pulse Inner Circle at pulseinnercircle.com. This is a paid school community that my friend Mike Balcom and I have put together, where we're always talking about the things that we are learning and using. We have a monthly meetup and a lot of courses and other resources in this community that you can use right now. So if you're interested in this kind of thing, be sure to check it out. And if you found this video helpful, be sure to like and subscribe and follow along with REtipster.com. Thanks again for watching. Talk to you next time.